All right. So, onto our fourth stage. We're going to give the bread some folds and then transfer it to an oiled container. So, let's see. Just a little bit in there. And a straight-sided container is nice for your proofing container because then you can see how much it's grown. So then we got just some water in a bowl. So let's see. Let's adjust this. All right. So get your hands just damp and go to your bread. Your corner. Stretch it out. Turn it. If your hands get a little bit sticky, you can get a little bit more water. But again, not a lot of water. So let's go where we can see it. Pick up, stretch out, fold it back over. Now our fourth. Up, stretch out. And this is where you have to judge how much to stretch it out. So you want to stretch it as much as you can, but you don't want to you don't want to rip it apart. You don't want to be doing this. No. So you want to stretch it and then be done. And then sometimes I'll take it and flip it over so that all the seams are on the bottom. And then I'll pick it up like this, kind of let it hang. See how I'm letting it hang? And then I'm rolling underneath. I might do that. So now you can see it's kind of a clean-ish homogeneous mix. The first time it's going to clean up a little bit. Don't get it perfect. Just stretch it as much as you can, and you'll see that point where it begins kind of bouncing back and be done. So now we're just going to pick it up and put it into our oil container. And we're good. I'll put a little lid over this, and that's it. So last thing I was going to... I am making yogurt. If anyone's making yogurt, I'll tell you how to do that. I don't know if anybody cares. It's just boredom. So we heated up milk, you scald milk, and then you cool it down to about 110, and then you seed a little bit of yogurt. It's really similar to making your sourdough culture. It's the same sort of backslap technique. So you take a little bit of that culture that's already in previously made yogurt, and then you mix it in, and then you try to keep it at about 105 to 115 degrees for as long as you want. It'll coagulate after about 4 to 5 hours at that temperature, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. And then if you want it a little bit more sour, continue through that process. And then I am making strained yogurt, Greek yogurt. So I've got it, I chilled it out and then whisked it a little bit, and I've got sitting in some cheesecloth over a strainer, and you can see the whey is falling out. So sometimes I'll do this with a bag or something like that, but we don't have a bag that's fine enough mesh cloth. Cheesecloth is a little bit too thick in the holes, so I have this like little special cloth, but you can triple up the cheesecloth. That's pretty much it. And then just strain it out until you like it. Sometimes I'll swirl it around because the thicker stuff will be stuck in the bottom and it'll stop it from straining. So if you give it a little fold, that's yogurt. Super simple, but it's a very similar. Some of the same-ish bacterias, lactic acid producing bacterias that you'll find in your sourdough starter, and a real similar process. Same sort of idea. You're just taking this culture that you're keeping alive and then seeding it into another one. What you'll find if you want to make really good yogurt, order some cultures. You can order cultures online. I think it's called New England Cheese Making Company. The cultures will begin to degrade as you use them again. Your yogurt will change, somewhat similar to how your sourdough starter will change over time, although I think that's a little bit slower process. They tend to be a little more rigid. The way, we usually make ricotta or something like that, or I'll mix it and use it for when we do like sourdough waffles, which we'll probably do in the next couple of bakes or something like that. We'll make some waffles with one of the mixes. So I think we're planning on making ricotta because we've done a little bit of yogurt over the last week. So once this all strains out, we'll make some ricotta. All you do is heat that up and then add a little bit of acid, and the acid causes coagulation of the leftover proteins, and they'll come together to make ricotta. So super easy. You don't get a lot though. It's not, yeah, but you do get a little bit. It's kind of cool. Maybe I'll make a cake or something with it, or use it with the same waffles. So that'd be fun. Any questions before I go? Now at this point, you're just gonna give it maybe 4 more of those folds, wait a half an hour between those folds. So about 2 hours of that. And then you're done. And now then at that point, you're just trying to judge when you are ready to shape it, when it's proofed enough. And we went over that. It's kind of hard to tell, but part of it is volume, which is why you want a straight-sided container. So you want it to, get up about 60 to 90%, depending on the bread, and rise up. The other part is just poking it and feeling it. And then the third part is just doing it again and again and again and getting better at it, getting better at touching it. And that's why if you do it in the same size container with the same amount of ingredients, then you'll know each time by the volume when it's done. And then you can practice. If it comes out well, then you know by touching it, by poking it and seeing how it, when you poke it, how quickly it rebounds, if it does at all. So what you're looking for when you poke it, I hate to say this because it's very different for all different sorts of breads, depending on your hydration and what's in there. But when it's correctly proofed, you want to be able to poke it quickly about half an inch down, and you want to take about 2 to 5 seconds for it to slowly come back up. If it bounces right back, it needs more time to proof because it's still too stiff. And if it stays indented, it's overproof because what's happening is you're pushing down through those starches and protein matrix, but they're so stretched out that when you push it, instead of it taking it and then rebounding, it just breaks apart, which is what's going to happen in the oven. So even if you shape it right then, you put it into a basket and you heat up your oven and you put it into the oven, all of those proteins and starches are so stretched out that as soon as it hits the oven at high temperature and all that steam and all that bacterial activity releasing gases, it's already stretched out and it's just going to explode instead of stretching a little bit more, trapping it and making good bread. Instead, it explodes and then collapses and you have dense bread. So underproofed and overproofed bread look extremely similar. Very hard to tell unless you were the person making it. So if you show me a loaf of bread and say it's dense, it's one of those two things, but it's very hard to tell which one because they both end up looking the same. A dense loaf because it starts small and then it just gets caught, and an overproofed one because it starts here, explodes, and then goes back to this. So they look very similar, and that can be confusing for some people. But that's why watching your volume helps a lot. So if you use the same containers, same measurements, it'll be a little easier to tell because as your bread comes out good, you'll know, okay, I did that right. And then start touching it more and feeling it more and getting comfortable with what a fully proofed bit of dough feels like. And that'll be helpful. All right, so we'll come back when it's ready to shape. I got a time on the online, but that's a little up in the air, as we know. So it might be sooner, might be a little bit later. Watch the replay if you don't catch it on time, but it's a good one to watch. So either way, the shaping is difficult. So that's something that you should continue practicing and watching. All right, bye y'all.